Hi everybody, just thought I'd post a short video about active listening and using your O.A.R.S. Now O.A.R.S, the acronym, stands for Open Questions, Affirmations, Reflections and Summaries. And really, if you're going to be a good active listener, then the use of O.A.R.S within that is really important. So open questions will keep the conversation flowing because it gives your client the opportunity to kind of keep talking, think about what they're considering, kind of plumb the depths of their subconscious a little bit and maybe keep going. You have to be careful with the use of open questions, so it's not carte blanche to keep asking questions. And as a rule of thumb, you kind of want one open question maybe to every 2 or 3 reflections. So maybe next time you're working with a client, again, I've always said this, but do a recording and listen and ask yourself, am I asking too many questions? The thing about continually asking questions, it goes from being a conversation into being an interrogation, and that's the last thing you want. So open questions are quite key, but use them sparingly if you can. Now the next thing, next part of the acronym O.A.R.S is affirmations. So affirmations are really highlighting strengths that you notice within the client. I mean, a real simple one is right at the start of a conversation, maybe the first time you're meeting a client, they turn up and they go, oh, it's been hectic and real busy and traffic was bad, blah, blah, blah. An affirmation within that would be, well, despite all of that, you've managed to get here on time. So thank you for that. And that, that's real good timekeeping. And I really appreciate that because you're highlighting a skill that they've demonstrated and maybe they're not aware of it. And this often happens when clients aren't too confident. They will talk about things and say, oh, I can't manage with this, I can't cope. And actually, during a conversation, they are maybe giving you examples of where they do manage and where they do cope. And so an affirmation really highlights those kind of talents that maybe they're hiding under a bushel a bit. Now, an affirmation is different to praise. So praise you have to be very careful with because praise almost puts you in a one-up kind of position. So you're saying, oh, really well done for doing that. You're doing great. I think you're doing a marvellous job. The minute you hear yourself saying, I think you am, or I above anything really, you're putting yourself in a one-up position. And in an active listening perspective, you really want to be equal. You want to be respecting the client's autonomy, and you're not saying I'm better than you. You're saying I'm here to help you. We're working on this together. So be careful with praise because praise is not the same as an affirmation. Now reflections are a little bit more complex. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because it's something we cover on the behavior change workshop. A reflection really gives back to the client what they've just said to you. Now, a simple reflection is almost a simple rephrase of something they've said to you. So it's just maybe putting it into a slightly different sentence. A complex reflection infers a meaning. So they say something to you and they say, oh, so from that, I'm getting that you do this, that and the other. Now, without going into too much detail, as I say, with a complex reflection, sometimes when people are first doing this, they're a bit worried about getting it wrong. But in actual fact, you can't really get it wrong because if you get it wrong and say back to the client, oh, so from that, I'm getting that you can do this, that, they will tell you, they'll either say, yeah, that's spot on, that's exactly the way it is. And they'll think, great, this guy really, this girl really understands me. The converse of that will be, no, that's not really what I meant. What I meant was blah, blah, blah. Reflections are really important because they're closing that communication loop. That I think of something to say, I put it into words, I speak those words, you as the listener hear those words, you decode those words into some type of meaning. And very often in communication, that's where we leave it. What a reflection is doing, it's completing the last part because it's giving back those words and what you understand from them. And that allows the speaker then to say, yep, you've got it, or no, you're kind of wide of the mark. So it's quite an important aspect of good communication. And reflections takes a lot of skill and a lot of practice. And certainly throughout the behaviour change workshop, we do a lot of this to get people comfortable with it, because when you first start, it almost feels like you're parroting back to the person, and to a degree you will be, and then with time you become more comfortable with it and your reflections become more complex, and that allows the conversation to flow. Professor William Miller often talks about completing the paragraph. So the listener, the client will say something, I did this and that and that and that, and then you kind of carry on that sentence. So it's continuing the paragraph, and so the whole conversation continues to flow. As I say, takes a bit of skill to get. Finally, summaries. Summaries are really useful. If you're hearing a lot of kind of positive stuff from the client in terms of how they can change, things they might do, things they've done in the past, you giving them back all those things in a summary in very short kind of précis form, it gets them to hear their own voice, and so this helps build their confidence. The other real beauty of a summary is if you feel a conversation is drifting off too much, you can often use a summary to kind of stop where you are, if you like, put a kind of branch in the road, summarize, and then hopefully push the conversation back on the track that you want to go for. So the key thing with motivational interviewing and with active listening is, if it's going to be advantageous for the client, it must have some direction. And the direction we're actually looking for is moving in the direction of change. So it's not just a cozy chat, and it's not just an opportunity to moan. There is some purpose to it. So when I say use your O.A.R.S when you're active listening, that's exactly what I'm getting at. It's use those skills: open questions, affirmations, reflections, summaries. Just a brief overview. Hopefully you find it useful, and as I say, we'll go into a lot more detail on the behavior change course about how you can refine and hone those skills. And thanks for now.